Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On this episode of Conversations, I will be talking with Radflo shock technology owner Glenn Classen. Glenn, am I saying the last name correctly?
Yeah, Classen, you're close enough.
Okay. Excellent. So, Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this evening, and so we can find out more about you.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's jump right in and start at the very beginning. I know that you were born in South Africa, but tell us more about it. Where in South Africa?
So I was born in a relatively small town just south of Johannesburg in South Africa. It's a place called Vereniging, which a translation means association, and it was a big steel town, and my dad ran the Chrysler dealership there. We moved to Johannesburg 1969 or so, and my dad was in the motor trade all his life, and that's where I grew up for the rest of my time in South Africa. I was in Johannesburg. I went to school there, primary and high school. I went to boarding school for 4 years. I went to university there, and I got my first job working at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange there as a stock exchange dealer.
Okay. And what was school like? I have these visions of South Africa. Besides the wildlife, we had a daughter that spent a week or two there doing a dance and singing thing that they went around doing with the school that she was in, performing. And I've got a couple other friends that have come from South Africa to the United States, but I don't know anything about what the education system was like there and what kind, I'm only familiar with the United States. So can you enlighten us?
Yeah. I mean, the education system, first of all, I need to point out that, I grew up in a country where black and white people were separated, with apartheid. And growing up as a small kid, you're not aware of that stuff until you become aware in high school, and then you realize that there's a problem going on. But, there's not much you can do about it. But, my education was fantastic. I went to a great primary school and high school. We had a first class education. There was no doubt about it. And I would say we were privileged to be able to have that. In South Africa, when I was growing up, there were the middle class people like my family, and then there were lots of poor white people, and at the same time, there were lots of poor black people, and everybody was separated by law. So you never really ran into anybody else except people in your neighborhood. But going to school was similar to going to school here. You had all your friends and you played sports, and all the parents got involved with all the different activities. And but not being aware of anything socially or politically about how the country ran, or that we should be aware of until much later when I was older.
Right. So what kind of sports? I would imagine more like rugby and stuff.
So in primary school, it's an interesting thing. The Afrikaans primary schools play rugby from the age of 5 years old.
Wow.
But English primary schools you played soccer in primary school, and then you went to high school and played rugby. We didn't play soccer in high school. So I played soccer and cricket in primary school, and in high school I played rugby and I swam.
Okay, you were a swimmer. And were you a long distance or a short distance?
No, I swam, 100, 200 meter races. That was it. None of the 500 or 1500 meter races.
Yeah, in high school I swam the 500.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's too much like hard work.
Yeah, we just swam and swam and swam. That's all I can equate it to. We just kept swimming. Everybody wanted to be a sprinter, but I was not fast enough to be a sprinter. But I was fast enough to carry it for a longer distance. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's that works. Throughout your whole life is that people sprinting to the finish and other people are in it for the long haul. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, you put it that way, and yeah, that's kind of what I've done with the rock crawling.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, schooling, what kind of subjects was it the basic education there, or did they give you a lot of electives to give you more of an experience of what was available?
In primary school, it was general math, science, English, Afrikaans as a language, geography, history, and there was art and music and all this kind of stuff. And then in high school, you could choose, between doing biology and accounting, or you could, you did have a few electives that you could choose to try and specialize in. But that was, and in South Africa, primary school went up to, you were 12 in primary school and you went to high school when you were 13. So there was 5 years in high school and 7 years in primary.
Okay. All right. And after primary school and high school, you did college then as well?
Yes, I did 2 years of national service. Back in the day, we were fighting the war. We were fighting communism and everything else.
Right.
So national service was mandatory. So I spent 2 years in the military. So I'm a veteran, I suppose you could call me. But, it was an interesting time of my life. Met some great people and got to see things, different parts of Southern Africa that I would never have been able to do. But ultimately, it was 2 years of time wasted trying to get on with my life. But on the other hand, it was really, really good because it made you mature and understand how people work. There were so many different types of people in the military, and trying to deal with all of these things. Going into the military as an 18-year-old, thrown together with bunches of different people. I mean, you really had to work your way around all of that.
Right, I can understand that. It's a lot. Then all of a sudden you're in with people that you're not used to, and you're not the ones you grew up with.
No, yeah, and so that sort of helped me along in my life, and then after the military, I went to university. I wasn't really cut out for getting a university degree, so I never did finish, which was always it's always bugged me that I didn't quite finish that. But at the end of the day, I sort of had the understanding that if I was ever going to need somebody with a skill that I didn't have, I was going to hire them. And that's where I'm at today.
Right. I mean, I agree 100%. In our industry, there's a lot of DIY guys, do it yourself, that are great welders and fabricators, and they may have a second job. But there's others that have made it a business. I learned a long time ago, I'm better off hiring somebody to do the fab work.
Yeah.
It's just plain and simple.
I have to agree.
So when did you start So you did a little bit of college, and then you started a job, and you said that you worked in the financial sector.
Yes, so I got a job at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as a dealer, and I worked there for 2 years. It was a really high-paced, crazy time. Drink too much, party too much, but you're young, so you don't really feel all of it. But I had an opportunity to travel overseas, so I stayed in the UK and did some odd jobs. I worked at a bar, and that was great. I spent 3 months working in Israel, just because I wanted to see the country. And at that stage, it was time for me to go back, and it was a crazy thing because I'd said on my way back, there was somebody called my surname, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And I said, did you call me? And they said, no, that's Warren Classen, and that's my brother. And so we ended up on the same flight back to Johannesburg. And, when we landed, we ended up moving in together as brothers. And he had started a company called Rhino Shock Absorbers back in 1988. He was working with Toyota Motorsport in South Africa. And he sold the business, and he came to the US, and he was working in Anaheim for a company called Raceco. And he worked there for 18 months, and he came back home, and the guys that had bought his company had messed it up. So I said to him, I was working at a bank as a foreign exchange dealer at the time. I said, well, let's fire this thing back up. So that's what we did. We worked out in a garage, and we had some parts made, and we started selling shocks. And 18 months later, I left the bank, and we moved into a small building, and we were prepping off-road race cars and building shocks. And that's where it started, 1992.
Nice. And was this an older brother or younger brother?
Younger brother.
Younger brother. And so when you went off to Europe, he basically did the same thing, and you guys just kind of lost track of each other?
No, we kept in touch, but back in those days there was no email or anything. You wanted to talk to somebody, you had to write a letter or have a phone number or send a telex. And it was just by pure chance that we ended up on the same flight on the way home.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good surprise.
And so then you get back, you get into the shock business, and you start doing race prep and things like that. And then you did some military work as well, right?
We did, yeah. We built some steering dampers for an armored vehicle for the South African military, and so that was pretty good until there was a moratorium on defense spending. So we lost that. And in any typical small business, there's massive swings of good luck and bad. And, we moved out of the workshop back into the garage twice. So it was definitely character building.
Right. And how did he get into the shock business to begin with?
So he built himself a Baja Bug, and he had some Bullsteins on it. And it used to upset him because when you'd go to a race, and the Baja Bug was on the trailer, these Bullstein shocks would just weep, and he hated that. So he thought, well, he's going to make a better shock than that. And so that's how he decided to come up with making a shock absorber. He had studied hydraulics and fluid flow. So, he came up with his own piston design, and, he had the housings machined and welded and everything else. So, and, the shocks worked great for what they were at the time.
And so in 1992, you guys partnered up, and then that continued through the early 2000s?
Yeah, 2004.
2004.
Yeah.
And did he stay in South Africa, or did he come over to the United States as well?
No, he immigrated to Australia, actually.
Okay.
And the way I ended up coming to America was, the market in South Africa was very small. And we were making shocks for pickups and SUVs and off-road race cars and, motorcycle shocks for road racing and quads and all sorts of stuff. standard production vehicles, Formula V, Formula Ford, and but he was going to immigrate to Australia regardless, and I was looking for a way to grow Radflo. So I came over here to see what it was like, and I wasn't, I was only thinking off-road stuff. I wasn't thinking, original equipment replacement stuff at all back then. Right. And we came over here and very naively, it looked like there's a big market, and obviously there was. And back in 2003, 2004, there weren't the resources that we have today on the internet. So we'd go to the American consulate and try and do some research. I came out here and I met a couple of guys that I met on Race Desert. And I met up with them here and we had a chat and we were talking about the business. And then I met a guy, a South African guy who lived in the US. And he was interested in setting up and running Radflo in the US, and I'd obviously stay in South Africa with my family. And things weren't progressing the way we wanted. So, he suggested that I come over to the US and help him set it up the way I want. And then, for 2 years, and then we'd go home. And that's how I sold it to my wife. We'd go on a massive adventure and we'd travel and we'd do all these fun things. And so that's what we did. We came over here and I arrived with a suitcase in March of 2005 to find that nothing had been done for the business. The only thing that had happened was the bank account that I opened the previous August was still there with the money I put in it as a deposit. But so, this guy, didn't work out with this guy. And after a year, we were no longer connected, and the rest is history. We didn't go back to South Africa. We're here now, and we are US citizens, and, we live in the good life.
And your wife didn't mind the move?
Oh, no, she did mind. She thought there was going to be 2 years, and then when she realized it wasn't, it was, well, you said 2 years, well, we're not going home, But, she's definitely been she's definitely been a defining person in this whole thing, because she has always been full of encouragement. At no time did she ever say, I want to go home, I don't want to be here, and for that I'm eternally grateful, and I love her for that. She stuck with me throughout this whole thing, and it's just like it is today.
Right. So what kind of a culture shock was it coming from Johannesburg to, and I'm assuming Southern California, LA area?
Yeah, we're down in Orange County. We actually, in Fountain Valley, where my business is now, that's where we moved. It wasn't really a massive culture shock. People speak English. We'd watch TV, so you sort of get an idea of, the accent and everything else. The biggest shock was the food. Like, the food in South Africa is so good, and you go to Denny's. Like, we don't have anything like a Denny's or like a Marie Callender's or anything back in South Africa. So we were just really disappointed with how bland the food was. It was like manufactured stuff for the masses.
Yes. That's why I don't go to chain stores.
Yeah. So, we started hunting around for local restaurants that we could support. And so we've been lucky enough to be able to do that. But I think that is in terms of, what it is. The other thing is that people are just so busy in the US, life is hard here generally. You're constantly working, and people don't get much leave. They don't get much time off. And that took an adjustment, without a doubt. It really did. But, it all worked out. We have a great group of friends that we've met through the kids' schools, and I can't really call them kids anymore because they're in their 20s. But, we've been very fortunate and with what we have.
And how did the kids transition? Was it pretty easy for kids? I see that's. I know that, like, my wife was a military, what we call a military brat, where she traveled all around and never had friends for more than 1 or 2 school years, because her dad was always relocated. And it was tough to build friendships. Everything, every year people change because she was on military bases. But coming to the United States, all of a sudden your kids are into a school system that's probably a little bit different, and then dealing with that. What was it like for them?
To be honest, it was pretty simple. I mean, they were like 3 and 5.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
to them it was okay. They're going to school, and there's going to be new kids, and before you know it, they've got friends, and it's not like being an adult where people are a little guarded and they don't want to share too much because they don't want to be taken advantage of. With kids, everything's open, man. Just let's go for it. Let's be buddies. So we were very lucky with that.
Right. It's a lot easier transition at that age than
even
if they were 10 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah. No, without a doubt.
Okay, good. And so you've always, when you got over here, you were running Radflo, and you've continued to do that and build the business.
Yes.
And what was the first product? You brought over what you were doing there in South Africa, and you went into the racing scene?
Yeah. So, we started here, got a shop in Fountain Valley. It was, I think it was 12 or 1,300 square feet. And, bought a manual lathe and a manual milling machine. And I hired a guy who was a machinist. And we made the first components for the shocks that we were selling, off-road race stuff, on these manual machines. 2.0, 2.5 coilovers, 2.5 bypass shocks, 3.0 bypass shocks. And, it was, we didn't have a clue. We just trying to find people to supply us with materials and trying to make sure they can supply us materials at a relatively good price. People in this big companies in this country want to sell to big companies. They don't want to smuggle the small guy, so you don't get a discount. So there's a lot of negotiation going on with these guys, trying to convince them that they should help me. So I was very lucky that I managed to do that.
Good. That's great. And so you went into the desert racing scene first?
Yes. Yeah. Desert racing, and then into the rock crawling stuff. I mean, I've been involved in the rock crawling stuff since about 2006, I think.
Right. I remember that time. So then when you had your business there in Fountain Valley, you and your machinist, and you're trying to produce a new product for the U.S. market, the hurdles that you must have come across, not so much the shock development, because you guys had that, but marketing must have been an intriguing avenue for you. Can you expand on that?
I can. I mean, marketing, I came over here and very, very quickly realized that this was a massive pond and I was just a very, very small fish, and the only way I was going to be able to grow my business and market it was to promote, customer service, customer focus, because trying to compete with Fox and King and Bilstein back then, Sway Away, there was no chance I could ever do that. I was just a small guy. There was still advertising in magazines, Dirt Sports, and, trying to get onto some of these forums and trying to promote your name. And we would go to some of the desert races, Vegas to Reno, Parker. But slowly but surely, that's the thing about this country, which is so fantastic, is that Americans love the underdog.
Yes.
And that certainly helped us. There were some guys who started buying product for, Nissan Frontier, Nissan Titan, a guy called Greg from PRG, one of my very first customers, and I made product for him for a long, long time. And I could make him what he wanted, and he was happy with that, and I could supply him the stuff in a relatively good time. So there was no marketing. We would take out an advert in a magazine, but it was nothing. Nobody knew who Radflo was or how to get there, and I didn't even know how to market myself. It was more seeing what my competition were doing and trying to emulate something along the same lines, but not having the money that they had to squash me if they really wanted to. It would have been pretty simple, but I wasn't. I thought, well, if I could just get a few scraps that fell on the floor, this market's big enough for all of us. So, and fortunately that worked out.
And you probably weren't on their radar at that point.
No,
When they saw the
definitely.
ad in the magazine, they probably went, "Oh, okay, who's that?" And that's
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, just a little fly on the wall.
And then, who was? Do you remember who your first real racer partner was that you got on their vehicle?
So there was two brothers called the Dixon. It was called Dixon Brothers Racing, and they raced in Class 7 in the Best in the Desert series.
Okay.
And I had met Aaron when I came over in 2003, 2004. So we ended up putting shocks on his vehicle, and they won their championship. They sold the car subsequently, and that car went on to do very well. And then we got into the Jeep Speed stuff, and we won Vegas. We won the Baja 1000 and the Baja 500 in Jeep Speed. And I forget the guy's name. I must apologize, but this was fantastic for us. It gave us some recognition. And shocks are weird things. It's not like you go win a race and then everybody wants to buy your shocks. It's not like Ford, win on Sunday, buy on Monday kind of deal. It doesn't work like that. So, but it did give us some credibility that we had guys who were well known in the race industry that were using our product, and that gave us a leg up.
Yeah, that's always good. That it gives that credibility for sure.
Yeah.
And at what point did you look at it and say, okay, this is viable. We're gonna make this?
Well, so the flip side of this coin is that I came over here it's called an L1 visa. And what it is an intra-company transfer. So I effectively transferred myself from my company in South Africa to here. And it lasts for 7 years. And it's usually 3 periods of 2 years with a final 1 year. But they flipped it over. That my very first year was 1 year. So I'd only just arrived, and I was trying to apply for an extension. And at the same time, I'm talking to immigration lawyers about trying to get a green card. And we're putting these applications in, and they're denying it, saying, you're performing the tasks you're supposed to manage. And it's like, well, I thought I'm managing my business. And I didn't understand that. But, I quickly realized that desert racing, I was not going to make it with doing desert racing, because Fox and King owned that. Right. Like they do today. And so I started making shocks for OE replacement stuff, and then, the rock crawler stuff. And that was probably around about 2008 when I really thought, okay, we can make a go of this. We had got an extension on our work visas, and we weren't out of the woods yet, but we were making a run of it without a doubt. And we had moved into a bigger building in 2007, and things were looking good. It was just before the recession, so we were really happy.
Just before the recession.
Yeah.
How many of us can say that? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how did the recession hit you? Was it hard? I mean, you were still in the process of building and growing the company. Did it come to a halt, or were you able to weather it pretty well?
Yeah, fortunately, I mean, it was a rough time because, we were trying to get our green card, and but honestly, that recession did not hurt us at all. If I look back on it now, we didn't have one period where there was no growth. We were very, very lucky. It was a different recession to what we had recently, even now, where people are really worrying their cash. That was a different recession. If you had money back then, you were fine. It was the people who didn't have any money, so we were really fine. And it was during that recession that we converted our work visa to a green card application, and but I had to employ 10 people, so I had to actually hire people in a recession, and I had to hire them for 2 years. So, but as it turns out, I needed the people, and I've never fired anybody from, like, there were 12 of us, and I didn't, after the 2 years, I didn't let anybody go. The business just kept growing. So, things just worked out for us.
Right. That's great. That's really good. So then your marketing must have gotten a little better, at least. How did you, you went to OEM replacement, and that's just basically a stock number change and a little bit of design from the racing shocks, correct?
It is. A lot of the components cross over. I mean, obviously lengths change and rod end lengths change and everything else. But, I had knowledge of damping and valving that goes into these things. We've done a lot of work with Nissan Motorsport on the Dakar project. We were vying to get that business back in 2003. So we've done a lot of testing with them. So, we had an idea of what was required for independent front suspension and solid axle rear, which really it really helped us a lot. But at the same time, so we started, people know us in the Nissan Frontier market, but the Toyota market is where it's at. I mean, there's just
so many of them.
That market is owned by somebody else, and we just want a little bit of that. So we started getting into that, and slowly but surely just building up, a following.
So Nissan first, then Toyota.
Yeah.
And then what was the progression after that?
And now we make everything, we Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Ram, and we export products to a number of countries for all different sorts of applications that you don't get in the US.
Okay. And are you building them when you're not building them to OEM spec though. You have more flexibility on the dampening and the technology that's built into the shock, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, generally, a vehicle will have certain parameters that the manufacturers build it around, but we know that you can get a little more droop out of some of these things by changing the upper control arm. So you maximize those things, and you come up with your own parameters, and that allowed us to make these coilovers using our components and our knowledge and know-how to build these shocks and to valve them accordingly.
Okay. And are you just primarily a shock manufacturer, or what other product lines do you have, if you have some?
We are. We are just a shock manufacturer. We also make a hydraulic high lift jack, which we've had forever, and we're in the process of redesigning that. But our primary focus is shock absorbers. I haven't. People have always said, "Well, why don't you make your own upper control arms, or why don't you do this, or why don't you do that?" And it's like, well, true shock absorber manufacturers have become few and far between, and it allows us the opportunity to deal with customers that don't feel like they're buying from the competition with everything that they're trying to sell.
Right. Okay.
So if somebody makes upper control arms, we're a manufacturer. We can help each other out, and I can supply them, and it works for all of us.
Right. Okay. And if you don't mind giving a list of what are some of the companies that you work with that are doing more of the suspension besides, and you're providing shocks, or you're working together with?
I mean, it's a bit of a mishmash because, there's, King is in the same boat as we are. They, they don't have their own upper control arm as of yet. I'm not sure whether they plan to do something with it, but, we make shocks for most of the lift kit manufacturers. We make shocks to suit their different lift kits. We work with Total Chaos. We make product to suit Dirt King and Baja kits. So we don't deal directly with these companies, and they don't stock our product, but we work closely with them on getting the links from them to make sure that the shocks we do make to suit their kits are 100% perfect in terms of how they fit and function.
Okay, great. And your plans going forward, you're going to stay in the same venues that you've been in, the markets that you've been running in?
Yeah, we're we continue to grow, and it's a weird thing because we'll go to Off-Road Expo and some 18-year-old will come up to me and say, I've never heard of Radflo, but I was around before you were born, but it's amazing what people look at and what they see and what they read in the different age groups. But we plan to stay in the same space that we've been in and continue to grow into that, developing new products. We were in the UTV market for a couple of years back in 2014, 15, 16. We exited that because the guy that worked for me, he left, and I just wanted to focus on what we did well. So, but we're looking now, we're testing something for the UTV market. We're having great success in the 4400 class, Ultra 4 with Paul Wolf. He's a fantastic ambassador for us. He's a really hard racer. He's really savvy. So he's doing well for us. Phil McGilton's another guy. Jaron Gunter, in the off-road industry, doing really well for us. And these guys, that's my roots, off-road racing. So, but at the same time, we have some fantastic vendors that sell our products. Wide Open Design, Busted Knuckle, Metal Tech. Some of these companies have been around, doing business with me for a very long time.
Do you private label shocks for some of the suspension companies? I know that there's suspension companies out there that are actually, like Terraflex. Okay, they started a suspension company and then they were, they now do the Falcon shock. But there's others that don't produce their own shock but have a line of shocks that have their name on it. Are you doing any of that kind of work?
Not at the moment. We did for a while. We supplied shocks to Toytech for their Toyota kits, and then they switched to Elka. And Elka's making a lot of shocks for a lot of companies right now. So no, we're not doing a bunch of private labeling. We do some co-branding with people overseas, and we're working on some stuff now with some of the lip kit companies, supplying shocks for they're in development, supplying shocks for some of their bigger vehicle applications. And when these things are released, then we will do a press release about that. I can't really divulge anything at the moment.
Right.
But we're not currently doing any private label for anybody.
Okay. And your OEM shocks, you got a line for like, the JK, JL, the JTs, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And we make shocks to suit the different lift kit manufacturers. So I don't have a generic 3 to 5 inch lift shock. Like I'll call Jeremy a Rockroller and get the lengths for his 3.5 inch lift kit. What shocks are these designed around? And I'll make the shocks to suit that. Whether it's working with Andrew at Let's Roll on stuff for Metal Cloak or whatever it is, we make the shocks to suit those different lift kits for the Jeep applications. And then, obviously on the Toyota and Nissan and Ford and Chevy products, we do the work on and measuring those things up and making sure that everything fits correctly.
Perfect. Okay. And your kids are now, you said, in their 20s. Are they boys, girls?
No, 2 boys. My oldest son, Nicholas, he actually graduated as a mechanical engineer in May this year, and he started as a design engineer with us in July. So he works for me full time. And my youngest son, Thomas, he is in Cal State Chico, finishing off a communications degree, and then his plan is to come and work at Radflo. So, we definitely going to try and keep it in the family.
That was my next question. So excellent. You led right into it. And how about your wife? Is she working with the company, or is she
Oh no,
stay at home?
No. She's integrating. She's an integral part of this business. She handles accounts, payables, receivables, and she does the invoicing. So no, she's definitely 100% part of this business. We're co-owners. So she although she works for me, we have a really special relationship where that allows us to work together.
That's how Shelley and I are as well.
Yeah,
it works out really good. Even though we're together 24/7, basically, we work really well together.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's important. It really is, I believe.
No, I agree.
And so, do you allow shop tours? So if I get down to Southern California and I swing by Fountain Valley, I'll be able to give you a call and do a shop tour?
Absolutely. You're more than welcome anytime.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Is there anything else that we haven't touched base on that you would like to talk about or discuss?
I don't know. I think a few of the shining lights in my time, running Radflo, besides just business being good for us generally. We won King of the Hammers back in 2011 with Lauren Healy. We had a first, a third, and a fifth that year, which was unbelievable.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was. It was like a million years ago, though. So that was like, for us, that was just amazing that we managed to pull that off with those great drivers. And then, Nick Nelson, he won Vegas to Reno in his 4400 class, and he won qualifying at KOH many, many times. I think the highlights for me is the people that I've met and the friendships that I've made, and understanding that we're ultimately all the same, but we are also very different.
Very true. Very true. So you're going to be out at the lake bed for here shortly in February or January into February. You going for the 3 weeks or?
No, yeah, I'll be out there for my sins. I've only missed one King of the Hammers. I've been there every single other time. So I can't say I look forward to it, but I look forward to seeing great people. And so we'll be there the week of King of the Hammers, shock tuning for a few days, and then obviously just there for the rest of the events. So yeah, it's we just hope for good weather.
Right, and I read that you partnered with Wayne Israelson from Alltech.
That's correct. Yeah. So we're Wayne. We're working on an internal bypass shock design with Wayne, which is in testing at the moment. And he has a lot of knowledge with regards to testing and tuning shocks with guys who run trophy trucks and down. So he's been invaluable with his advice. And so yes, we I wouldn't say we formed a partnership, but we have a really good working relationship with Wayne.
Excellent. And what teams are you are running your shocks this year?
Off the top of my head, I can tell you Paul Wolf, Phil McGilton, Jaron Gunter, the guys from TMR Customs. I think this is going to be the most guys going to be running our shocks this year at King of the Hammers.
Excellent. That's great.
Yeah.
And then you're working with Andrew McLaughlin and Let's Roll?
Not on the off-road race stuff, no.
Okay.
But we have been working with him on the Jeep OE replacement stuff for the metal cloak kits that he sells.
Okay. Excellent. Well, great. I can't think of any more questions that I need to ask you. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, I feel like I've just, laid myself bare.
You have, but you haven't embarrassed yourself for sure.
No, well,
and no trade
maybe,
secrets.
yeah, no trades, no, none of that.
And we all had those early years of, like you said, the partying and the drinking and things when we were early in our life and before, marriage and working, that kind of thing. I
Yes,
can relate to that.
exactly.
Yeah, I worked for an ad agency in San Francisco for a while, and it was a little too much of all of that back in the early '80s. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for spending the time and speaking with us and bearing yourself, as you said. And I think a lot of people out there will get to know you better, and hopefully it brings you some more business. I know I've been watching Radflo's development over the years, and I'm getting ready to do shocks on the Raptor. And when I do, I will be talking to you about that. Been working with Total Chaos as well on some things for that, and doing some other things with them with the magazine and stuff. So, I hope to try your product myself. So
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, and man, I hope you all the luck and the prosperity that you guys can handle in 2024 and the future.
Thank you very much, Rich. I really do appreciate that.
All right, Glenn. Thank you, and I'll let you know when this is going to air.
Okay, great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You take care and have a great evening.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.